Morning, grade fives. Okay, today we are starting with term three's work for history. Don't stress, don't worry, because we've merged the terms, so it's only normal that we're going to be going into some of the same stuff or into the new term. We will be backtracking a little bit to do some revision when we get back to school, just to make sure you haven't missed anything out. Okay, so let's have a look-see. Okay, so we will be doing Egypt, which was a farming kingdom. Okay, so this is more modern Egypt over here. In other words, this is what it looks like today. So obviously you can see the Sphinx and things like that have deteriorated over time. So imagine how beautiful it must have been when they first built it, okay? This entire situation over here on the right is obviously a lot of erosion and weathering and stuff have happened. This is inside a temple. Now, consider the fact that these people settled here about 10,000 years ago. Their civilization was leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else in the world at the time. They really were a great nation of people. Okay, so the Egyptians were a farming community or farming kingdom at the time. They settled along the Nile, which is here. You're actually going to mark on this map. I will send you a picture of a different map. You're going to look at this map and see if you can mark it. It is in your notes. And here is a picture of what the Nile would have possibly looked like at the time. Okay, even very similar today. I don't think Egypt as a country has changed that vastly, although they do have cities now and they do have McDonald's, things like that. One of the best views in Egypt is from a McDonald's. It's the pyramids. Okay, so they settled along the Nile River about, we're assuming, 10,000 years ago. They settled here because the land was incredibly fertile. So if you look at this map, if you see the blue is the river, the green is called a floodplain. So once a year, this river would flood, and the water would go everywhere the green is and cover that entire area. And then the water would recede or go back to the normal river, the Nile. And all of this green area here that is now land again would be a thick layer of black, fertile soil, okay? So this was where they would plant their crops. And the soil would make growing crops effortless. So I know in countries like Sierra Leone, where they're up north in very tropical regions, you could take a stick, break it off a tree, pop it in the ground, and it would start growing. This is how fertile the soil was there. You could grow pretty much anything there. Okay, so this is just the basic idea. Obviously, I have no pictures of ancient farming, but that's why I say I think they're very similar to how they were back then. It's a closer match. If you look at the little boy, still dressed very traditionally, he's farming. You can see date palms at the back there. Okay, this would have been the Nile. Here he's farming. Again, you can see the palm trees. Okay, so it was a culture of people who had learned that if you farm, you settled in one place, food is readily available to you. It's a steady source of food. They would have stuck with that. Okay, so the land was fertile because of the flooding of the river. And we assume it was about 10,000 years ago. So the reason we have such good or such vast knowledge of the Egyptian culture in the past is because they were expert record keepers. These are paintings that you find in tombs. These are actual paintings that they have done. You would have found them in tombs and things like that on walls somewhere. So here we can see the kind of farming that they did. If you look at the pictures here, they look like they are cutting down wheat. They're using sickles, which is that tool that cuts it down. Here it almost looks like they're making flour. So use your discretion, have a look at the different pictures and figure out what you think it is that they were doing, okay, and how they must have farmed. You can see that they also used animals, much like South Africa, all over the world, we did do farming. They're also using animals. They used human labor, okay. Here's another picture. We see they have animals, so they would have farmed animals as well. And over here, what do you think this is? I'm not going to tell you. We'll discuss it when we get back to school. You tell me what you think that is. Okay. So before we go into the irrigation, people from Africa in the north, remember we spoke about how the African people from like Nigeria, that area, they moved down into southern Africa. So it was only the Khoi that were here. The Khoisan, sorry, the Khoisan were the only ones in South Africa at one point. And then people from the north moved down and joined together, and they became a bigger population of people. The same thing happened with Egypt. People from North Africa moved towards Egypt because the ground wherever they were was drying up, or famine or drought or things like that would have pushed people in different directions. So it pushed some people south and it pushed some people towards the Nile. So once the people from Africa, these were countries like Syria, Palestine, Nubia, Libya, other African countries around that area. That was about 7,000 years ago. So they started moving towards the Nile at that point, and they would have settled along the Nile River as well. They would have then started creating little tiny villages that would have been dotted along the Nile. And with that comes, because obviously if we look back at our map quickly, not everybody is going to fit right along the waterline. So they would have had to have built their farm slightly further back. And then this is what they would have done. In order to get water from the river to their farms, they would have built systems called irrigation. So it would be pulley systems where they could pull water up using weights. It would have been canals and ditches that would have been dug to go all the way through to other farms, okay? Carrying systems, using animals, things like that. So they were incredibly intelligent people. They were able to get water from the river to farms that were nowhere close to the river. In order to do all of this and to have someone manage it, they would have chosen one person to kind of oversee all of this. Obviously, as the villages started to grow, this person would have become more and more powerful because the farmers would have paid him a portion of their crops or whatever it is that they were growing. They would have given it to this person so that he would control the water and make sure that everyone was being fair. So as they became more farmers, this person would have been getting more and more crops or money or whatever it was that they would give him, so he would become more powerful. And that is how leaders started to emerge. Okay, and then we will go more into leadership in the next lesson. But yeah, so they were very organized farmers. They created villages, and yeah, that's about it for this one. So there's a nice example of the ditches and the systems they could have used. This is a water wheel. So what you would do here is you would roll the wheel, and these little things here, almost like cups, they would have picked up the water as they were coming up and then pour it into a wooden trough, which is kind of like this. The water then would have gone all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, watering as it goes along. Okay, and you can see here it's got holes, so it would have almost been like a sprinkler system, so to speak. Okay, so that's about it for today, guys. One more lesson and then hopefully we're back at school. I miss you. Bye.